alone, you're right. Let's not do that.
Was that TMI? That wasn't TMI.
That was definitely not TMI. I mean, that's hilarious, but that's definitely.
Hey, Empowered Vegan Lifers. Ella here with my co-host, Stephanie. How are you, Stephanie?
Great, Ella. How are you?
I'm doing pretty damn good. Thank you for asking.
Yeah?
Yeah.
How was your weekend? Tell me about your weekend.
Yes. So this weekend, we went to Shark Valley, which is in the Everglades. So we drove like a good hour into the Everglades to go to this little place with a 15-mile path and there are alligators everywhere. And I went, so why it's called Shark Valley,
I was just going to ask that.
I have no idea.
It would make more sense to be Alligator Valley.
It would. However, the road that goes through all the way through the Everglades from Miami from the East Coast to the West Coast is called Alligator Alley. So maybe that is like a little too close.
Maybe so.
I just chose sharks because sharks are pretty cool too.
Because they're around and they're
not in the Everglades.
But they're not around.
And the sad part is, Stephanie, if I had read any of the information at the visitor center, I'm sure I would know that. And it didn't even occur to me. I just wanted to go and get on the bike and see some alligators. And guess what? Saw no alligators.
Did you see any sharks?
And we didn't see sharks either.
Oh my gosh.
I know. Last time I went I think it was in November. And this was my second time when it's a lot cooler. And it was one of the hottest days in Miami on Sunday that we've had all year, which is saying quite a bit.
Yeah.
How hot Miami is. And then to combine that with being in the Everglades with, zero coverage, no, big trees or anything like that. It was blazing. It was blazing. I even got sunburn on my back. But the point is, alligators, I don't know why I didn't even think about this, but they're not going to be out in the sun when it's extremely hot. They're hiding like smart little reptiles,
Well, hell yeah. I think I would really love to see an alligator.
Well,
like kind of up close.
I've got a trip for you then.
Awesome. Let's do it.
Okay, I don't know if you're gonna like it.
Why?
Because it's in the Okefenokee Swamp and there are hundreds of alligators and you canoe camp. It's like a 5-day venture. You have to make reservations because you have to make it to the next little platform where you can set up your tent because there's no solid ground. So you're going 5 days canoeing all day long. There's no place to get out and pee. So luckily we had 2 canoes. And so what I would do is put 1 foot in each canoe and pee down the middle.
That alone, you're right. Let's not do that.
Was that TMI? That wasn't TMI.
That was definitely not TMI. I mean, that's hilarious, but that's definitely if you want your friends to go with you places, that's definitely one thing to throw in there, is to say, I had to pee with 1 foot in each canoe. And then that friend can decide, friend meaning me, can decide, oh, wow, that sounds like a trip that I don't want to take.
I can't blame you, I have to say, but I had to warn you because it is quite an experience. And literally, there are alligators everywhere. I wonder if any of our listeners have done this trip. Literally, you'll be canoeing and paddling, and when you paddle, you will like hit a alligator as you paddle. They are,
oh my gosh,
everywhere. It is.
Do they get like mad? And
they don't. And I was out there for 5 days, and it's, you don't really have cell phone service. You have to rely on a compass. I mean, it is a true adventure. The cool thing about canoe camping, though, you can take quite a bit of stuff because you got a canoe to carry it. You don't have to carry it on your back. But yeah,
Except a
they're
toilet. No toilet.
no toilet, no toilet.
Can't carry the toilet with you.
Exactly. Yes, got to be
Like
ready for
part.
that sort of adventure too. But no, they really, you know, and I'm not an alligator expert, so I'm sure during mating season or when they're, you know, protecting their eggs, I'm sure it might be a different story. But no, they're kind of just mind their own business, and they don't really move. Like they just are hanging out on the side and in the water, and eventually, you know, the first day you are freaked out, or
Yeah.
I was a little freaked out. My sister was ultra freaked out. You should have heard her. I mean, I have to say, there was this huge alligator right away in the first hour we got out on the water. There's this huge alligator that came in the middle of our path as we were canoeing. And my sister saw it, and it kind of came in the middle and just stopped. And there wasn't really a way around it. And you should have heard my sister. I hope she's not going to get mad at me for calling her out on this, but she screamed bloody murder. And I remember her saying, backpedal, 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 backpedal. She was like, backpedal, you know. So we were like frantically backing up because it's quite, you know, it's just something you don't experience very often. But by the end, it's like, yeah, you're just, you know, you're among the alligators and it's all good. They're doing their thing, you're doing yours, and it's all good.
So I have to go back to the peeing because I just have to ask this question.
Go for it.
So when you were peeing, was there ever a point that you saw an alligator while you were peeing? Did you pee on an alligator? I want to know the details in relation to the peeing on the alligators, because that seems important.
I can see how that would, you know, be at the top of your mind while we're going through this story.
Sorry.
And I would like to say that I would never, ever pee intentionally on an alligator without the alligator's permission, if that was something the alligator was into. I'm sorry.
Always wait for consent. Always.
Woo, we are going out there today.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, but no, there was not any alligator in sight the times I was peeing, to answer your question.
Because I kind of feel like if I were mid pee and I saw an alligator, I feel like that would give me stage fright. I feel like I would just be like, oh my God, I can't pee anymore. I can't do it.
I think there's only one way to find out.
Well, you know what? I would probably be fine with the alligators, but if there's snakes, I can't.
Yeah, where there's alligators, there's snakes. But you know what? Let's leave it like we like to do. Let's stay in possibility. Stephanie, how about that? Can we do that?
Until next time.
Until next time. Oh my goodness.
Oh my gosh.
Well, I didn't expect you go on about that for so long, but
no, me either.
Yes.
You never know what's going to happen. It's a variety show.
It is a variety show.
You never know.
Yes.
You never know.
And the other thing.
Oh my God. I love these so much. I cannot wait to get mine.
Well, we have to tell them what it was.
Yes. Because we're a podcast, not. Yes, our vegans taste better shirts. They are amazing. I love them so much.
They are, and we just got a big variety of different styles now. It's on the Sexy Fit Vegan store. It's exciting. We've got tank tops, we've got men's and women's now, and you know, it's fun. I get a lot of compliments on these, and it's not for everybody. You know, not everybody is in that place, but probably people that are listening to us talk about peeing, you know, and alligators and all of this, our listeners might be up for a Vegans Taste Better shirt, if you ask me.
I think so. I think our listeners are edgy like that.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Stephanie, I think maybe we should get into today's training, because last time we dove in so deep into the what when it comes to boundaries, and the why it is so insanely important to our lives. and our health, and to be able to set and maintain healthy boundaries. Really, when it comes to living your best life, when it comes to living a life that's in line with your values, standing by your veganism, all of that, it's all related. And so we had to cut it because you've got so much incredible information for us. And now today we get to go into the how. And I'm so excited to hear all your steps and strategies for our listeners.
Yeah, this is going to be pretty in depth. So I do suggest that if this is something you're very interested in, to grab a pen and paper, because I do have some steps. So, setting and sustaining boundaries. And I know I said this in the other episode, but I want to say it again. It's a skill. And unfortunately, it's a skill that a lot of us just didn't necessarily grow up learning. So, we have some steps to get started. So I want to just go ahead and dive right in. The first one is to look at your emotions, and that is going to help you name your limit. So two really, really good indicators of boundary violations are discomfort as well as resentment. And if you're feeling uncomfortable, that can really point to a boundary that's being violated from the outside. While if you're feeling resentment, that's generally an indicator that you've pushed yourself beyond your limits to avoid uncomfortable feelings, like feelings of guilt or feeling like the bad person, feeling like the bad guy. And we're giving into somebody just imposing their own expectations or their views on us. And so we're responding to that by violating our own limits. So that first step is to really check in with yourself, check those emotions, really see where those are coming from. And discomfort and resentment, those are two that you really want to look at when you're first starting to set those boundaries.
Wow, that is so clear when you said that. I can just imagine so many scenarios that makes perfect sense for. Discomfort when it's coming from the outside, and resentment from when it's coming from ourselves. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. I think that we're often caught in that loop of, I feel uncomfortable about this, and I know there's something wrong with it, but I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway. And so then you're really caught in the loop of discomfort and then resentment and then resentment and discomfort. So it's a good way to really look at it.
Awesome.
All right. So the second step is to really pay attention to those feelings and then become very, very clear about your own limits. And that's both internally and externally. Those boundaries are both internal and external limits. You really can't set good boundaries if you're unsure of where you stand. So identify your physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual limits. Consider what you can tolerate and accept, and what makes you feel uncomfortable or stressed. Those feelings, coupled with our understanding of our values, help us identify what our limits are. So I think it's a really good idea right now just to kind of throw out some examples of where limits might be, so people kind of understand what we're talking about. For example, you might find that you're uncomfortable when your best friend asks you for money. This might be a mental and emotional limit that you're wanting to set with your friends and your family. You don't lend money because everyone has a different philosophy when it comes to money, or you've seen it destroy relationships. It can cause conflict. So you want to set that particular limit. Another one might be that you become stressed when your children have a lot of neighborhood kids over. And so you want to set a physical boundary. Your children are welcome to play with the neighborhood kids outside, or welcome to play in the garage. But coming into the house, that's a physical boundary. Maybe your partner expects you to take on the bulk of the responsibility of the household. However, that's something that you find impossible to do successfully. But it's okay to set a boundary, to say, I'm willing to take responsibility for this, but I'm not really willing to take responsible for anything else. I'm overloaded. So.
Stephanie, what do you think are some of the reasons why we might feel this discomfort and yet loan the money, for example, anyway? Because I think that's what happens
Yeah.
so much of the time, right?
Yeah. Well, I think it really starts with the way that we see ourselves. You know, we want to see ourselves as generous people. In that instance, we want to see ourselves as a good friend, or as a good brother or sister. And we also don't want the judgment of the other person. And so we tend to, lean into that, thinking that we're going to resolve that negative emotion. We're going to resolve that discomfort by going ahead and lending the money, for example, when really it just leads to more negative emotion because you've crossed a boundary that you're not comfortable crossing.
Exactly. And all of this takes so much awareness, right?
Yeah.
So much self-awareness, which is exactly what we teach with our self-empowerment coaching system. This is exactly what we walk our clients through as part of Vegan Life Coach Academy. Because if you don't have that ability to take that step back and observe and explore, then you're going to keep on the same path.
Yeah.
You know, and indefinitely. So, yeah.
Exactly. All right. So the next step is to give yourself permission to set those boundaries and then work to preserve them. When you're setting new boundaries, the emotional pitfalls can cause us to really wonder, just like we talked about just a minute ago, really wonder if we even deserve to have the boundaries in the first place. So some things that you might think about in terms of pitfalls: fear, guilt, self-doubt, those things that we just named in that example. It's going to feel strange when we first start to set boundaries because we aren't used to creating those limits. We might fear the other people's response. If we set and enforce those boundaries, we might feel guilty for speaking up and saying no to a family member. For example, many believe that they should be able to cope with a situation and say yes because they're a good daughter or they're a son, or they feel, and then they end up feeling drained and taken advantage of. So this can cause some self-doubt, and so much so that we really wonder if we deserve those boundaries because we start second guessing our self-worth in that. But it's important to keep going back to why you set the boundary in the first place and then continue to create and hold that line because it creates a healthier you. And in the long run, it creates a healthier relationship too. That separation is incredibly important. And that limit is that separation. So,
1,000%.
Yeah. So the next step, boundaries are all about really honing in on those feelings and really honoring them. So if you notice yourself slipping and not sustaining those boundaries, so ask yourself some questions. What changed from when I set the limit? You got to really consider the situation. Like, what am I doing? What is this other person doing? What about this situation is making me resentful or uncomfortable or stressed? And then really examine your options. What am I going to do about the situation? What do I have control over? And so there you have it. You might really consider yourself committing yourself to putting yourself in the leading role of your life. And I think that that's really the important part of all of this, is that only you can be in that leading role. And it's not okay, but it's not only okay, but it's really necessary to put yourself first and allow yourself to really consider your needs and wants as just as important as the people around us. So prioritize that self-care. It isn't selfish. It is necessary for a healthy life. Putting yourself first also gives you the energy and the peace of mind and the positive outlook to just be more present with others in the long run, and really there for them. So when we're in a better place, we can be a better wives and husbands and mothers, coworkers, friends, all of the above when we're considering our relationships.
Yes, I love that you talk about putting yourself as the leading role in your life. I think that is so powerful, and so often, I think about our clients as well and our members of Vegan Life Coach Academy and how it's such a process,
Yeah.
And one example I think of is so many women coming in saying, I'm really wanting to be vegan, but I'm cooking, 3 different meals every night for my family. And
yes.
Yeah. And I always push that to you, Stephanie, because you have a family that you're feeding, kids and all, and you do not do that.
I don't. And my first question to people who are you a short order cook? Is that your job? And if you're saying no, well, then there's your boundary. Your no is you're not making 3 meals a night. You are, have a different plan. Have a different plan.
Yeah. And it takes you what?
Whole other episode there, but have a different plan.
Yeah.
All right. So our next step, if you're having a really hard time with boundaries, I really encourage you to seek some support. That can be a support group at church or counseling, coaching, good friends. And I'll put my own stuff out there because this is something that I really, really struggled with. About 13 years ago, I went through a divorce, and it was painful and devastating, as most divorces are. But when I came out of the emotional haze, I started really analyzing what went wrong. And the truth is, it came down to boundaries. I didn't have any. And my ex-husband didn't meet a boundary he couldn't violate. So we were the perfect pair to blow up a relationship. So I knew it was imperative that I build them. So, I do have to say that it wasn't just in my marriage that I didn't have boundaries. I didn't have them anywhere. So I had to really consider that. I had to form a new relationship with my ex-husband too, after forming a new one with myself, because the truth was he wasn't going to go anywhere. We have children, and he wasn't going away. So I needed to redefine that relationship too. And the support piece was really, really key. I found a church that has support group on forming boundaries, in the book Boundaries: When to Say Yes and How to Say No to Take Control of Your Life by Townsend and Cloud. And this was a real game changer for me, not only in my relationship with my ex-husband, but for my relationships with others, but definitely my relationship with myself. I really don't think it would have been possible without that support, and the time that I took hold of that support that I was getting from the other people in that group. And I can tell you now that my ex-husband and I have a great relationship. My children never have to choose between us. And at this point, I can really say that he and I are very, very good friends. So in the end, it really was a much healthier place for both of us to be.
So that's that long-term building, eventually a healthier relationship with other people by setting the boundaries that might rock the boat temporarily.
Oh, yeah.
It's an understatement.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's an extreme example, of course, but it's a good one to know that you're in this for the long haul. Yeah. It is worth the process that it takes, because this isn't something that will happen overnight, but it is worth the work for sure.
It's a process. And I have to butt in here when I'm talking about support and coaching. Well, this is what our new Vegan Life Coach Academy membership is all about.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes we forget to even throw that out there, Stephanie, but we've got this incredible, I don't even know how to describe the group that we have, these members that we have, and what they're doing in the group, the growth they're having, the sharing, the encouragement, the support, the coaching, all of it combined. It is so powerful, and I can't say enough about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And if this particular topic is difficult for you, what a great way to start to redesign your life and become that leading role, is to start and engage with a group of people that are going to support you in doing that, and support you in forming your own boundaries with yourself and with others. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so next, of course, we know it's not enough to create boundaries. We actually have to follow through. Following through is probably the harder part, really. So even though we know intellectually that people aren't mind readers, most of the time we expect people to to know what we're thinking. We expect them to know what hurts us. We expect them to know what makes us uncomfortable and stressed. But since they don't, it's important to be assertive and communicate when a boundary is crossed. And, honestly, most of the time, it really is just about being direct and communicating respectfully with the other person. Or I have to throw this in there, with yourself, respectfully with yourself, so that you can work it out. I want to point out that there is a world of difference between being assertive and aggressive. To hold firm, healthy boundaries is to communicate those before you feel the need to become aggressive with another person, or with yourself. So being assertive really puts forth your needs and your views confidently, very directly. It doesn't beat around the bush. Being assertive is simply standing up for yourself while still considering that others might have a point of view and being respectful of that. And that's different from your own, and that's in itself a boundary, but that yours are equally important to theirs. And so it's really becoming your own best advocate. Aggressive behaviors really sometimes just look like you're living the life of a caveman. Whoever has the biggest club is equal to the loudest voice. And I've noticed this, in our world, but I've noticed this in my workplace, and I'm sure that others have too. Sometimes aggressiveness is mistaken for strength, but really aggressiveness just lacks a personal control and a lack of respect for boundaries, and it is in and of itself crossing boundaries. So putting that out there, think about that behavior when you're communicating your boundary directly. So
absolutely.
Yeah. All right, so any new skill, assertively communicating your boundary takes practice. So if this is something new to you, I suggest starting with a small boundary that isn't threatening to you, and then incrementally increasing to more challenging boundaries, and really build upon your success. Setting boundaries takes courage, practice, and support. So start small. If you aren't used to setting limits with other people, particularly, it can be really, really difficult at first. Your inner people pleaser is going to be screaming at the top of her lungs, and that's okay. You got to let her scream, but start with something small. Maybe you want to start with your partner and blocking off an hour of time on the weekends where you do something completely for yourself and by yourself while he or she takes responsibility of the kids. Maybe it's less threatening to start with a coworker who's often teasing you about healthy food choices or your vegan food choices, and you simply have a conversation with that person about not appreciating the teasing and maybe why. Maybe it's with your children and the amount of money you're spending on their impulse buys at the grocery store, putting my own stuff out there, and setting that limit before you go, so that, letting them know you're the one that's buying things that are on your list, and they can request something extra, but you're going to say no, and just hold that boundary very firmly.
And what happens when they have a temper tantrum?
Well, we got to have another episode on that, because temper tantrums are a whole new thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I mean, it isn't easy to say no, and you're probably going to encounter a lot of temper tantrums, not just at the grocery store from your kids. And so I think that it is really, really important to be prepared for that. I mean, that's another step in all of this. But build your confidence, and that inner people pleaser is going to stop screaming. You're going to get used to the tantrums. And frankly, once you start setting those limits and holding fast to them, the tantrums become fewer and fewer and far between, because you're not giving in to them. And then you can start setting the bigger boundaries, and just know that you're going to expect some pushback for a little bit, but you've got the confidence and the know-how to do it.
Wow. Yes. The people pleasing syndrome, as we like to call it, which I am still, yes. Which I am still recovering from, for sure. It's everything is a process, but yes, that inner people pleaser screams so loud. She throws her own temper tantrum.
Oh, heck yeah. Yeah,
like in a big way.
Absolutely. I think probably most of us, when we start in this process, we're going to notice the people around us throwing their tantrums, but the person who's throwing the biggest tantrum is that person is the person that you're that you're living with most of the time than yourself.
Yeah. So. And then it gets addictive. Starting with small, such a smart strategy, because once you feel that power, that inner power, and peace, like there's a peace that comes about with it, and a sense of freedom, and it opens up the energy for us to move forward in such powerful ways in our lives. And that's why this is just so essential and so tough, but so worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the moment I realized that I could say no or I could say yes without explanation was probably one of the most freeing moments in my life. And so I invite people to that, to get to that moment. It takes a lot of work, but you'll get there.
And if you need support, you guys, we do have our free Facebook group, our Empowered Vegan Life Facebook group. If you're not a part of that yet, now's the time. We will put the link in the show notes so that you can join us. We've got over 5,000 people. We screen everybody who comes in. We make sure it's a safe and supportive environment for like-minded people, vegan and vegan curious, people who are striving to be the healthiest, best versions of themselves. Like, that's what we're all about there. It's completely free, and we're active in there as well. So if you haven't joined that, come on in. You can put it out there. We encourage you to get vulnerable and share your personal, struggles, so that we can support you in implementing all of the tools and strategies we teach you guys here at Vegan Life Coach Podcast.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Join us.
Awesome. So I think that's going to wrap us up for today. You guys, thank you so much for joining us. If you're loving what you hear and would take 30 seconds to leave us a review, we greatly appreciate it. And we just appreciate you for listening. Until next time.